I am Karen, 35 years old, and this is the story of how my sister Pamela broke my heart, then had her own shattered in front of millions. While I built a life saving others as a nurse in Boston, she crafted an empire of designer clothes and Instagram perfection. When she announced her $10 million Dubai wedding to tech mogul Gerald, I was thrilled until I learned there was room for Camel's celebrities and diamond fountains, but not for me. Before I dive into this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens when the perfect facade comes crashing down. Pamela and I were born 3 years apart, but grew up practically inseparable. Our parents, Thomas and Donna, raised us in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Massachusetts. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm, and Mum taught 2nd grade at the elementary school down the street. We weren't poor, but we certainly weren't rich either. Just an average middle-class family with standard middle-class values about hard work, education, and the importance of character over cash. From the beginning, Pamela and I were different. While I was content with library books and science projects, Pamela was cutting pictures from fashion magazines and sketching designs on any paper she could find. I saved my allowance for college. She spent hers on fabric scraps and beads to embellish her thrift store finds. Despite our differences, we shared secrets, clothes, and dreams. On summer nights, we would lie on the trampoline in our backyard, staring at the stars, and talk about what our lives would be like when we grew up. "I want to design dresses for the Oscars someday," Pamela would say, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "But you can be my +1 Karen. We will walk the red carpet together." I would laugh and squeeze her hand. "Promise you won't forget me when you're famous." "Never," she would reply. Sisters forever, right. The first real shift in our relationship came during Pamela's senior year of high school. Her talent for design had blossomed, and she created a collection that caught the attention of a visiting representative from the New York Fashion Institute. When the scholarship offer arrived, our entire family celebrated. Pamela was going to make it big, just like she always dreamed. The day we drove her to New York was bittersweet. I was heading to Boston University for nursing school that same fall, but somehow it felt like our paths were diverging much further than the geographical distance suggested. "Call me every week," I made her promise as we hugged goodbye in her tiny dormitory room. Every day, she counted tears in her eyes. For the first year, she kept that promise. We talked about her classes, my clinical rotations, the people we were meeting, but slowly, things began to change. Her calls became less frequent, her stories more about industry parties and connections than coursework. By her junior year, Pamela had begun interning for a famous designer and creating her own social media presence. Her Instagram following grew from hundreds to thousands, then tens of thousands. Meanwhile, I was learning how to insert IVs, read cardiac monitors, and comfort families during their worst moments. The contrast between our worlds grew starker with each passing month. While I worked overnight shifts at Massachusetts General Hospital, Pamela was attending Fashion Week events and building her personal brand. While I saved lives, she saved photographs of herself with celebrities. Our parents tried to bridge the gap. Mum would call me after speaking with Pamela, filling me in on her latest accomplishments. Dad would proudly show me her magazine features when I visited home. "Different paths, same roots," he would say, not wanting to take sides. After graduation, Pamela moved permanently to New York, then began traveling internationally for her work. Her appearance changed gradually with her success. The sister I had known with her natural wavy hair and freckled nose transformed into a glossy, polished version that sometimes felt like a stranger. Teeth whitened and straightened hair professionally coloured and styled wardrobe carefully curated. Every aspect of her image became part of her brand. I stayed in Boston, bought a small condo near the hospital, made friends with my co-workers, and dated occasionally, though nothing serious stuck. My life was comfortable, meaningful, but ordinary, the kind that doesn't translate well to Instagram stories. The last time Pamela and I truly connected was at our father's funeral 2 years ago. Dad had a sudden heart attack while shoveling snow from the driveway. The shock and grief momentarily stripped away the personas we had each constructed. For 3 days, we were just sisters again, holding hands during the service, sorting through his belongings and comforting our mother. Sitting on the porch swing, he had built Pamela, let her perfect facade crack. "I wish I had visited more," she whispered, makeup streaking down her cheeks. "I was always too busy, and now it's too late." I squeezed her hand like I used to when we were kids. "He was so proud of you, Pam. He showed everyone your magazine spreads." "He was proud of you too, Karen. You were always his rock." In that moment, I thought maybe we had found our way back to each other. But grief is a strange thing. Sometimes it brings people together permanently, and sometimes it creates only temporary bridges that collapse once the initial shock subsides. After the funeral, Pamela flew back to her life, and our communication returned to occasional texts and social media likes. She sent expensive but impersonal gifts for my birthday and Christmas. I sent handwritten cards and small, meaningful presents for hers. We existed in each other's orbits without truly connecting. Over the next year, her star continued to rise. A collaboration with a major department store features in Vogue and Elle, a growing role as an influencer beyond just fashion. Our mother would call me bubbling with excitement about Pamela's latest accomplishment. "Did you see she has 3 million followers now?" Mum would ask. "That is great," I would reply, wondering if any of those millions of people knew that Pamela snorted when she laughed too hard, or was terrified of thunderstorms. I watched my sister's life through a screen double, tapping her photos, occasionally commenting with heart emojis. It wasn't the relationship I wanted, but it was the one we had. Different worlds, different values, connected by blood and childhood memories that seemed increasingly distant. I found out about Pamela's engagement the same way her 3 million followers did. On a Tuesday evening in April, after a 12-hour shift in the ER, I collapsed onto my couch and mindlessly scrolled through Instagram. There it was, a professionally photographed carousel of images showing Pamela in a white designer dress on a yacht in Monaco, a massive diamond ring prominently displayed on her finger. Gerald Lewis, the handsome tech entrepreneur she had been dating for 8 months, down on one knee. Champagne sunset perfection. The caption read, "I said yes to forever with the love of my life. Gerald, you make all my dreams come true. Get ready for the wedding of the century." The post already had hundreds of thousands of likes and comments. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me, "Did you know? Have you met him? When is the wedding?" I sat there, phone in hand, trying to process my feelings. Of course, I was happy for her. But the sting of learning about such a significant life event through social media rather than a personal call was sharp. Was I so peripheral to her life now that I didn't deserve advance notice? 3 days later, Pamela finally called. I was in the hospital cafeteria on my lunch break when my phone lit up with her name. "Karen, did you see my news?" Her voice was breathless with excitement. I swallowed my hurt. "I did. Congratulations, Pam. The ring is beautiful. 7 carats, emerald cut, flawless clarity. Gerald says nothing but perfection for his future wife." She laughed, the sound polished and performative. Nothing like the snorting giggle I remembered from childhood. "We are thinking Dubai for the ceremony. Gerald has connections there, and it will be absolutely spectacular. The most exclusive wedding of the year." As she rattled off details about potential venues and designers who were dying to create her dress, I tried to steer the conversation towards substance. "He seems to make you happy. Tell me about him, about your relationship." There was a slight pause. "Gerald is amazing. He built his tech company from nothing and sold it for billions last year. He knows everyone who matters in New York and Europe. Our social media engagement when we post together is off the charts." "That is all great, but what is he like as a person? Do you laugh together? Does he support your dreams?" "Of course," she said quickly. "We are perfect together. Everyone says so." She smoothly shifted the conversation back to wedding plans and the engagement party happening the following weekend in the Hamptons, an event to which I was not invited, though she assured me it was just industry people and Gerald's investors. After hanging up, I Googled Gerald Lewis. The search returned millions of results. Gerald speaking at tech conferences, Gerald at charity galas, Gerald on the cover of business magazines. 38 years old, graduated from Wharton, built a data analytics company that he sold to a Silicon Valley giant for an undisclosed but reportedly massive sum. But as I dug deeper, I found hints of another narrative. A Reddit thread discussing questionable business practices, a small tech blog alleging that he had stolen intellectual property from a former partner, comments on his Instagram suggesting he had a reputation as a womanizer before meeting Pamela. None of it was conclusive, and it could have been nothing more than jealousy or internet rumours. But something about his carefully crafted image raised my nurse's intuition, the same feeling I get when a patient's symptoms don't quite add up to the diagnosis. When I called our mother that night, she was ecstatic about the engagement. "Did you see the ring?" she gushed. "And Gerald is flying me out to New York next month to meet him. First class. What do you think of him? Mum, does he seem right for Pamela?" "Well, I haven't met him yet, but he sent the most gorgeous flowers when I agreed to come visit, and Pamela sounds happier than I have ever heard her." I bit my tongue. Dad would have been more cautious, asked more questions. But he wasn't here, and Mum was thrilled to see Pamela settling down with someone successful. Over the next few weeks, Pamela's social media became an engagement content factory. Professional photos of the Hamptons engagement party, video tours of potential wedding venues in Dubai, close-ups of potential table settings, flower arrangements and cake designs. Each post carefully tagged with luxury brands and wedding vendors, no doubt part of sponsorship arrangements. What became clear from these posts was that Pamela wasn't just planning a wedding, she was orchestrating a media event, a spectacle designed to elevate her brand and cement her status. Wedding influencer was apparently her new identity, with daily polls asking followers to weigh in on decisions from invitation fonts to bridesmaid dress colours. I tried to remain supportive, commenting positively on her posts and responding enthusiastically to the few texts she sent, but each time she referred to the wedding as the event of the year or posted about the celebrity guests who had RSVP'd. I felt the distance between us grow wider. Reports of her bridezilla behaviour began to surface. She fired 3 wedding planners in 2 months. A designer friend let slip in an interview that Pamela had rejected 15 custom dress concepts. Gerald mostly appeared in these posts as an accessory, smiling and agreeing with whatever Pamela wanted. 6 months before the planned wedding date, Pamela posted a professionally designed save the date video featuring drone footage of the Dubai luxury resort where the ceremony would take place. The caption mentioned a limited, exclusive guest list of 200 of the world's most influential people. I waited for my personal invitation, telling myself the video was just for social media, and real invitations would come separately. I even took tentative steps to request time off from work, not an easy feat in a short-staffed hospital. But as weeks passed and no invitation arrived, an uncomfortable suspicion began to grow. When the glossy white envelope finally arrived in my mailbox, my heart leapt. The return address was from Pamela's New York apartment, and the heavy cardstock screamed wedding invitation. With trembling fingers, I opened it, only to find a note card with Pamela's personal monogram. Karen, just a quick note to let you know we have finalized our wedding plans for Dubai. It is going to be absolutely magical. Due to venue constraints and security requirements for some of our high-profile guests, we have had to limit our guest list substantially. I hope you understand. We'll send photos. Love, Pamela. I read the note 3 times, unable to process what I was seeing. Venue constraints. The resort she had chosen could accommodate 500 guests, and I was her sister, her only sibling. If the guest list was being cut, surely I would be among the essential invitees. Still in disbelief, I called her. The call went to voicemail twice before she answered on my 3rd attempt, her voice slightly annoyed. Karen, hi. I am in the middle of a dress fitting. Can I call you back? I got your note. I said, my voice smaller than I intended. About the wedding. Oh, yes. Her tone was distracted. Did you get the gift registry information too? We are registered at Harrods and Bergdorf. Pamela, I am confused. I am not invited to your wedding. I am your sister. There was a pause, and I heard her ask someone for privacy. When she came back on the line, her voice was lower, more controlled. Listen, Karen. This wedding is extremely important for my career. The guest list includes fashion editors, influencers, celebrities, and Gerald's business associates. Every person has been strategically selected. And your sister does not make the cut. The hurt was turning to anger now. She sighed. You wouldn't fit the luxury aesthetic we are going for. You work in a hospital, Karen. You wear scrubs and sensible shoes. Most of our guests are arriving by private jet. It would be uncomfortable for everyone. The words hit me like physical blows. Uncomfortable for everyone, or embarrassing for you. Don't make this difficult, she said, her voice hardening. I am including Mum because she is the mother of the bride, but even she is nervous about fitting in. This is my special day, and I need it to be perfect. Perfect for your social media, you mean? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. You have your world, Karen, and I have mine. They don't mix. I am sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it is the reality. I heard someone calling her name in the background. I have to go. The designer needs me. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the note card still in my hand. The sister who once promised we would walk red carpets together now found me too ordinary to witness her marriage. The aesthetic didn't fit. I didn't fit. That evening, my friend Janice came over with wine and chocolate after I texted her what had happened. She actually said that about not fitting the aesthetic. Janice was incredulous. That is some next-level bridezilla stuff. I nodded, curled up on my couch with a glass of Merlot. She has become someone I don't recognize anymore. The Pamela I grew up with would never have said something like that. Have you talked to your mum about it? Janice asked, refilling my glass. Not yet. I don't want to put her in the middle. But even as I said it, I knew I needed to have that conversation. When I called Mum the next day, she answered with obvious discomfort in her voice. Oh, Karen, I was going to call you. Pamela told me about your conversation. So you know I am not invited. There was a pause. She explained about the limited guest list. I think she is under a lot of pressure with all the high-profile guests. Mum, she told me I don't fit the luxury aesthetic, that I would embarrass her with my scrubs and sensible shoes. My mother sighed. I am sure she didn't mean it that way. You know how Pamela gets when she is stressed. This wedding is very important for her career. more important than having her only sister there. I suggested a small family ceremony before or after the Dubai event, but she said there isn't time in her schedule. Mum sounded apologetic, but resigned. I don't know what to tell you, sweetheart. I am not comfortable with it either, but it is her wedding. Are you still going? I asked, already knowing the answer. I have to Karen. I am her mother. But I promise I will talk to her again about including you. But we both knew it was a lost cause. Pamela had made her decision, and once she set her mind on something, there was no changing it. After hanging up, I cried for the first time since receiving her note. Not just for the wedding, but for the sister I had lost long before this moment. Over the next few days, I considered my options. I could continue to fight for an invitation, creating family drama that would taint the event. I could boycott everything related to the wedding, including not sending a gift. Or I could take the high road, accept that this was who Pamela had become, and respond with grace. In the end, I chose the latter. I selected an expensive vase from her registry and had it shipped to her New York apartment with a note wishing her happiness. I told Mum I had made peace with the situation and that she should enjoy the wedding without worrying about me, and I muted Pamela's social media accounts to spare myself the constant reminders of the event I wasn't welcome to attend. But that didn't stop the updates from coming. Co-workers who followed Pamela would show me her latest posts. Is that really your sister, the one getting married in Dubai with all those celebrities? The wedding hashtag began trending as the date approached. Photos showed the arrival of custom gold-plated invitations to the chosen guests. Videos revealed the private jets arranged to transport attendees from various global locations. There were teasers of the 7-tier cake being designed by a famous pastry chef, the rare flowers being flown in from 4 continents, and the 20,000 crystals hand-sewn onto Pamela's gown. Mum called daily from Dubai the week before the wedding, her voice a mixture of awe and discomfort. They have actual camels draped in jewels for the guests to take photos with, she whispered, as if afraid someone would overhear. And there is a fountain that sprays champagne instead of water. I am afraid to touch anything in my hotel suite. Everything looks so expensive. How is Pamela? I asked, more concerned about my sister's emotional state than the extravagance. Stressed. Very stressed. She had a meltdown yesterday because the lighting for the rehearsal dinner wasn't the exact shade she wanted, and she and Gerald had some kind of argument, but they are keeping it quiet. That caught my attention. An argument about what? I am not sure. I overheard her on the phone with him saying something about respecting boundaries and professional relationships, probably just pre-wedding jitters. But something in Mum's voice suggested she wasn't convinced by her own explanation. As the wedding day approached, I tried to focus on my work, picking up extra shifts to keep myself occupied. But it was impossible to escape the spectacle. Pamela's wedding had become a social media phenomenon, with celebrity gossip sites providing hourly updates. The bridal party, including 6 famous models serving as bridesmaids, were documented arriving at the resort. The wedding stylist, a woman named Carolyn, known for her work with Hollywood stars, was featured prominently in many of the behind-the-scenes posts. One of the bridesmaids, Beverly, a model, who had worked with Pamela on several campaigns, seemed particularly close to Gerald in the photos, often standing next to him at pre-wedding events. In one video clip that a co-worker showed me, I noticed Gerald's hand lingering a bit too long on Beverly's lower back as they entered a rehearsal dinner. Is it just me, or does that seem inappropriate? I asked my co-worker. Rich guys are always like that. She shrugged. Probably nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When Mum called that night, I asked if she had noticed anything between Gerald and the bridesmaids. Now that you mention it, she said hesitantly, there was a strange moment at the welcome party. Beverly was quite flirtatious with Gerald, and Pamela seemed upset afterward. But everyone had been drinking champagne all day, so maybe I misinterpreted. The night before the wedding, I was restless, unable to sleep, despite coming off a 12-hour shift. I scrolled through the wedding hashtag, torturing myself with glimpses of the world that had excluded me. In a live video from the rehearsal, I caught a glimpse of Gerald, clearly intoxicated, his arm slung around a groomsman's shoulders. In the background, I could see Pamela's face, a brittle smile fixed in place as she watched him. For a brief moment, our eyes seemed to meet through the screen, and I felt a chill. Behind her perfectly applied makeup and designer gown, my sister looked afraid. The day of Pamela's wedding, I was scheduled for a 12-hour shift in the emergency room. Perhaps it was for the best, giving me something to focus on besides imagining the ceremony happening halfway across the world. But during my breaks, I couldn't resist checking social media for updates. The initial photos showed a scene of breathtaking opulence. The ceremony space overlooked the Persian Gulf, decorated with tens of thousands of white orchids and roses. Pamela's dress was a masterpiece of beading and silk, with a train that required 6 attendants to manage. Gerald looked handsome in a custom tuxedo, his expression appropriately solemn as Pamela walked down the aisle on the arm of our mother's brother, Uncle Frank, who had stepped in to replace our late father. Everything appeared perfect, too perfect, almost like a movie set, rather than a genuine celebration of love. The professional photographs showed close-ups of Pamela's diamond tiara, the custom calligraphy on the programs, the celebrity guests dabbing tears from their eyes during the vows. It was exactly the aesthetic she had been striving for, carefully curated and instantly shareable. During my lunch break, I scrolled through more recent posts, expecting to see reception photos starting to appear. Instead, I found a strange gap in the timeline. The last post from the official wedding photographer had been nearly 2 hours ago, showing the couple's first kiss as husband and wife. Since then, nothing. Curious, I checked the wedding hashtag to see if guests were posting. What I found was chaos. A 10-second video clip clearly taken on a guest's phone showed Gerald and bridesmaid Beverly in what appeared to be a service corridor behind the reception hall. His hands were on her waist, her arms around his neck, their lips locked in an unmistakable kiss. The caption read, "Groom caught with bridesmaid less than an hour after saying I do, #Dubai wedding disaster." The clip had already been viewed millions of times. A second video posted minutes later showed wedding stylist Carolyn confronting Gerald in the main reception area, shouting something inaudible before slapping him hard across the face. Guests gasped audibly in the background. Pamela could be seen in the edge of the frame, her expression a mask of shock and horror. More videos appeared in rapid succession, Pamela screaming at Beverly, Gerald attempting to explain, his hands raised defensively, Pamela lifting a tier of their wedding cake and hurling it toward him, white fondant and filling exploding across his custom tuxedo. Security guards attempting to usher media guests out of the ballroom, Pamela's mother being escorted away by hotel staff, her face streaked with tears. Within an hour, Dubai wedding disaster was trending globally. Memes were already being created. News outlets were picking up the story, framing it as the ultimate influencer downfall. My phone rang. It was Mum, her voice shaking. "Karen, it is horrible, absolutely horrible." "I am seeing some of it online," I said, moving to a quiet corner of the break room. "What happened?" "That Beverly girl and Gerald have apparently been having an affair for months. The wedding stylist Carolyn caught them kissing in a hallway and confronted them. She had suspected something was going on during the rehearsals." Mum's voice broke. "Pamela is devastated. She locked herself in the bridal suite and won't come out or speak to anyone." "Oh my God. Poor Pamela. Despite everything, my heart ached for my sister." "It gets worse," Mum continued. All those media people she invited are reporting everything. Those horrible videos are everywhere. Gerald is claiming it was just a misunderstanding that Beverly kissed him and he was pushing her away. But Carolyn says she saw them together at 2 other events in the past month. Where is Gerald now? He left the resort. His people released some statement about privacy and misunderstandings. Mum sounded disgusted. I am trying to get a flight home tomorrow instead of staying the full week as planned. This whole thing is a nightmare. After finishing my shift, I went home and continued following the unfolding disaster online. Beverly had posted a statement claiming she and Gerald had been involved for 3 months and that he had told her his engagement to Pamela was primarily a business arrangement for social media purposes. Gerald's representatives denied this, claiming Beverly was seeking attention. Pamela's social media accounts went completely dark. No statements, no posts, no stories. In the vacuum, speculation and rumours flourished. Some claimed she had known about the affair all along and had proceeded with the wedding for the sponsorships and media coverage. Others suggested the entire scandal was staged for publicity. The cruelty of internet commenters was on full display, many seeming to take pleasure in Pamela's public humiliation. I tried calling her repeatedly, but got no answer. My texts went unread. Mum returned home 3 days later, exhausted and worried. She won't talk to me either, she said when she called from the airport. She has completely shut down. Her publicist says she is taking time away from the public eye to process everything. Did she stay in Dubai? No, she flew back to New York the day after, took a private plane to avoid the paparazzi. Beyond that, I don't know anything. For the next 3 weeks, Pamela remained silent while the scandal continued to unfold in the media. Gerald was photographed in Miami with another woman. Beverly gave paid interviews detailing the affair. The wedding vendors began suing for unpaid balances when Pamela's representatives tried to cancel payments due to breach of contract by the groom. The sister, who had built her entire identity around a perfect online image, was now the subject of mockery and schadenfreude. The very audience she had cultivated was now consuming her downfall with the same appetite they had once had for her carefully crafted life. I sent flowers to her New York apartment with a simple note, "I am here when you are ready. Love, Karen." I didn't know if she would receive them or care, but I wanted her to know that despite everything, she wasn't alone. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night in November, nearly 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, my doorbell rang just after midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at midnight on a weeknight. Cautiously, I approached my front door and looked through the peephole. What I saw made me gasp. A woman stood on my porch, shoulders hunched against the rain hair plastered to her head. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, no makeup, no designer labels visible. If not for the familiar shape of her eyes, I might not have recognized her as my sister. I flung open the door. "Pamela!" She looked up, her face pale and drawn eyes red, rimmed from crying or exhaustion or both. "Can I come in?" "Of course." I stepped aside, still struggling to process the sight of her. This dishevelled woman bore little resemblance to the polished influencer whose wedding disaster had been trending for weeks. She looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable, like the sister I remembered from childhood. She stepped inside a small suitcase rolling behind her. Water dripped from her hair onto my entryway floor. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Then her face crumpled. "Karen, I am so sorry," she whispered and began to sob. Without hesitation, I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her body shake with grief. "Shh, it is okay. You are here now. You are safe." She cried for what seemed like hours, though it was probably only minutes. I held her, rubbing her back like I used to when we were children and she had nightmares. When her sobs finally subsided into hiccuping breaths, I led her to my couch and wrapped a throw blanket around her shoulders. Let me make you some tea, I said, moving toward the kitchen. No, she caught my wrist. Please don't go. I can't be alone right now. Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish and confidence. I sat beside her, taking her cold hands in mine. What happened, Pam? How did you get here? I flew commercial, she said with a hollow laugh. Coach wore this disguise. She gestured to her plain clothes and bare face. Needed to get away from New York. The paparazzi are camped outside my building. My phone won't stop ringing with reporters and lawyers and people pretending to be concerned but really just wanting gossip. And you came here, I said softly, still surprised by her appearance on my doorstep after months of distance. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. I had nowhere else to go. No one else who would just let me be this. She gestured to herself, to the mess of tears and rain and exhaustion she had become. Everyone else wants something from me, a statement, an interview, a social media post, something to salvage their investments in the wedding. I don't want anything from you, Pam. I just want you to be okay. Fresh tears welled in her eyes. I am not okay. I am so far from okay. She took a shuddering breath. Gerald was cheating with Beverly for months. Maybe others too. Everyone knew except me. The stylist Carolyn tried to warn me a week before the wedding, but I wouldn't listen. I was so focused on creating the perfect event, the perfect content, that I ignored all the signs. It is not your fault, I said firmly. But it is, she insisted. I chose him because he looked good on camera and had the right connections. I ignored red flags because he fit the image I wanted to project. Our relationship was more about engagement metrics than actual engagement. She laughed bitterly at her own pun. And now, I asked gently, now I am a laughingstock. The memes, Karen, they are so cruel. All those followers I thought cared about me are having the time of their lives watching me fail. Her voice broke. My sponsors are cancelling contracts. The wedding vendors are suing for the unpaid balances. Gerald is trying to argue that the prenup is void because the marriage was never consummated. He can do that. His lawyers can try anything. The man is sleeping with my bridesmaid less than an hour after our vows, and somehow I am the one being painted as a fame-hungry fake. She pressed her palms against her eyes. Maybe I am. Maybe this is karma. No, I said firmly. No one deserves what happened to you, Pam. No one. She looked at me, then really looked at me for what felt like the first time in years. Why are you being so nice to me after what I said about you not fitting the aesthetic, not inviting you to my wedding? I was horrible to you. Because you are my sister, I said simply, and because I know the real Pamela is still in there somewhere beneath all the filters and followers. She started to cry again, softer this time. I don't even know who the real Pamela is anymore. I have spent so long crafting this perfect image that I lost myself in it. And now that the image is shattered, I don't know what is left. I squeezed her hand. Well, you can stay here while you figure it out, as long as you need. Really, you would do that for me? Of course I would. I smiled at her, though fair warning, my life isn't very Instagram-worthy. 2-bedroom condo hospital shifts frozen dinners. No champagne fountains or diamond-encrusted camels. For the first time since arriving, Pamela gave a genuine laugh. God, those camels. They looked so miserable under all those jewels. The whole thing was so ridiculous. She shook her head. I am so tired, Karen. Tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of caring what strangers think of me. Then don't, I said. At least not while you are here. This can be a no pretending zone. She leaned her head against my shoulder the way she used to when we were kids watching movies together. You know what the worst part is when everything fell apart, when the videos started circulating and people were laughing and pointing? All I could think was that you weren't there. That the one person who would have stood by me, who would have helped me through it with dignity, was the person I had deliberately excluded. I would have been there in a heartbeat if you had asked, I said softly. I know. That is why I couldn't ask, because deep down I was ashamed. She sighed heavily. Not of you, never of you. I was ashamed of who I had become, of the world I was choosing over family. I was embarrassed by our different lives, not because yours wasn't good enough, but because mine was so empty in comparison. You save lives, Karen. You make a real difference. I post pictures of outfits and get paid to pretend products change my life. We talked until the early hours of the morning, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. She told me about the pressure of maintaining her image, the constant anxiety of losing relevance, the emptiness of relationships built on mutual benefit rather than genuine connection. I told her about my work at the hospital, the patients who had touched my life, my small circle of true friends. As dawn broke, I showed her to my spare bedroom, a simple space with a comfortable bed and views of the maple tree in my small backyard. It is not the 7-star Dubai resort, I said apologetically. Pamela looked around the room at the handmade quilt our grandmother had made, the stack of dog-eared novels on the nightstand, the soft morning light filtering through curtains I had sewn myself. It is perfect, she whispered. It feels like home. As she settled into bed, exhaustion finally overtaking her, she caught my hand. Karen, thank you for not saying I told you so. I smiled and squeezed her fingers. Get some sleep, Pam. Things will look better after rest. But we both knew that recovering from this public humiliation would take more than a good night's sleep. It would be a long journey back to herself, whoever that turned out to be. And this time, I would be there every step of the way. The first week Pamela stayed with me was the hardest. She alternated between sleeping for 12 hours straight and pacing my living room at 3 a.m, unable to shut off her racing thoughts. The scandal continued to unfold online, with new sources coming forward daily with supposed insider information about her relationship with Gerald, most of it fabricated or exaggerated. I should release a statement, she would say, reaching for her phone, then putting it down again. But what could I possibly say that wouldn't just feed the frenzy? I adjusted my work schedule to be home, more worried about leaving her alone for too long in her fragile state. My co-workers covered some of my shifts without question once I explained the situation. "Your sister is the wedding disaster lady," my colleague Rita asked, eyes wide. "The one with the cheating groom and the cake throwing. She is also just my sister," I said firmly, "a person having the worst time of her life." Gradually, a routine emerged. Pamela would sleep late while I worked morning shifts. In the afternoons, we would take walks in the park near my condo, Pamela disguised in sunglasses and a baseball cap. In the evenings, we would cook dinner together, something she hadn't done since we were teenagers, helping Mum in the kitchen. "I forgot how therapeutic cooking can be," she said one night, as she chopped vegetables for a stir-fry. No cameras, no perfect styling, just creating something nourishing. The simple act of grocery shopping became an adventure. The first time I took her to my local supermarket, she seemed almost bewildered by the normalcy of it. "When was the last time you bought your own groceries?" I asked as she examined a display of apples with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb. "Years," she admitted. "I have everything delivered in New York, or eat at restaurants where people want to be seen with me." She selected an apple and placed it carefully in our cart. "Used to want to be seen with me," she corrected herself. On our third grocery trip, the cashier, a woman who had checked me out weekly for years, squinted at Pamela. "You look so familiar," she said. "Have we met before?" Pamela tensed beside me, but the woman snapped her fingers before she could respond. "I know you look just like that famous lady, the one from the wedding video. My daughter showed it to me. What a mess that was, huh?" I held my breath, waiting for Pamela to crumble or lash out. Instead, she smiled politely. "I get that a lot. Must have one of those faces." As we walked home with our bags, she laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in too long. That was oddly freeing. Being recognized but not really seen, being ordinary, In her third week with me, Pamela asked if she could join me for coffee at the local shop, where I often met friends before shifts. I was hesitant, worried about her being recognised, but she insisted. "I can't hide in your condo forever. Besides, I am going stir-crazy." My friends Janice and Thelma were already at our usual table when we arrived. I had told them about Pamela staying with me, but sworn them to secrecy. They welcomed her warmly, treating her like any new friend, not a celebrity in disgrace. As we chatted about hospital gossip and Janice's new puppy, I watched Pamela gradually relax, laughing at stories and offering opinions. When a group of young women at a nearby table began looking at their phones and whispering, occasionally glancing our way, I tensed. Thelma noticed too, and smoothly suggested we move to the coffee shop's back patio for some fresh air. As we relocated, she casually positioned herself between Pamela and the curious onlookers. "Thank you," Pamela said quietly as we settled at the new table. Thelma shrugged. "Nosy people are the worst. Famous or not, everyone deserves to enjoy their coffee in peace." That simple act of protection of normal human kindness without an agenda brought tears to Pamela's eyes. Meanwhile, Gerald was crafting his own narrative. His publicist released a statement claiming he had been caught in a moment of confusion and that the kiss with Beverly was not representative of his character or his commitment to his marriage. He was photographed looking appropriately somber, leaving a therapist's office, and rumours circulated that he was working on a tell-all memoir about the truth behind the wedding disaster. Beverly, seeing the potential for her own fame, booked interviews with anyone who would have her. In one particularly painful segment on a morning show, she claimed that Gerald had told her he and Pamela had an arrangement and that their marriage was primarily for publicity. "He told me Pamela only cared about the wedding, not the marriage," she said, feigning reluctance to share such personal details while clearly relishing the attention. Pamela watched the interview on my laptop, her face expressionless. When it ended, she closed the computer and sat in silence for several minutes. "He is trying to contact me again," she finally said, "sending emails through my publicist text messages from new numbers when I block the old ones, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that he made a terrible mistake, that we can still salvage something from this mess." "And what do you think?" I asked carefully. She looked out my living room window at the maple tree now dropping its red gold leaves in the November wind. "I think he is terrified of looking like the villain. I think he wants to control the narrative. I think he never loved me, not really." She turned back to me. "And I am not sure I ever loved him either. I loved the idea of him, the image we created together, the story we were telling the world." That evening, as we sat on my small balcony drinking tea, Pamela made a confession that broke my heart. "You know why I really didn't invite you to the wedding?" she asked, her voice small. "You said I didn't fit the aesthetic." "That wasn't it. Not really." She wrapped her hands around her mug as if drawing strength from its warmth. "I was embarrassed, Karen. Not of you, never of you. I was embarrassed by what I had become. When I am with you, I can't hide behind filters and captions. You know the real me, the me before all this. And I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would see through it all, that you would look at this $10 million spectacle and know it was empty. That you would see I was marrying a man I barely knew because he completed the perfect image." She blinked back tears. "And I couldn't bear for you to witness that, to see how far I had strayed from the person I used to be, the sister you knew." I reached across the small table and took her hand. "I would never judge you, Pam." "I know. That almost makes it worse." She attempted a smile. "You are the better person, always have been. That is not true. We just chose different paths. And mine led me to a public humiliation viewed by millions," she said with a hollow laugh. "Maybe there is a lesson in that." Slowly, as November turned to December, Pamela began to emerge from her shell of shock and grief. She started helping with small household tasks, finding satisfaction in making my condo more comfortable. She rearranged my living room furniture to improve the flow of the space. She organized my chaotic linen closet. She even helped my elderly neighbor carry groceries upstairs when her arthritis was flaring. One morning, I came home from an overnight shift to find Pamela at my kitchen table sketching on a notepad. "What are you working on?" I asked, peering over her shoulder. She covered the drawing self-consciously. "Nothing, just doodling." But later, when she was in the shower, I glimpsed the pad. It wasn't just doodling. It was clothing designs, but unlike anything I had seen in her professional collections. These were simple, elegant pieces with clean lines and practical details. Clothes designed to be worn and lived in, not just photographed. For Christmas, we drove to Mom's house, Pamela nervous about her first public family gathering since the scandal. Mum had warned our aunts, uncles and cousins not to mention the wedding unless Pamela brought it up first. As we pulled into the driveway, Pamela gripped my hand. "What if they all think I am a joke? What if they have been laughing at me behind my back?" "They are family," I assured her. "They love you." And they did. Aunt Viola hugged her extra tight. Uncle Jim told bad jokes until she couldn't help but laugh. Cousin Denise's children showed her their Christmas drawings without the slightest idea she was anything other than their mother's cousin, who gave good presents. That night, after most of the family had gone home, Mum, Pamela and I sat in the living room, looking at the twinkling lights on the Christmas tree. "I am so happy to have both my girls home," Mum said, her eyes suspiciously bright. "It is good to be home," Pamela said softly. "I am sorry it took a disaster for me to realise what matters." After New Year's, Pamela began talking about the future. Her social media accounts remained dormant, but she was starting to consider what came next. "I can't hide forever," she said one evening as we washed dishes together. "And I can't impose on you indefinitely." "You are not imposing," I insisted. "Stay as long as you need." "I know, but I need to build something new, something real." She handed me a plate to dry. "I have been thinking about starting over. A small design studio, making clothes I actually believe in. No influencer partnerships, no chasing trends, just good design and quality materials." "That sounds wonderful, Pam." She nodded, a tentative excitement in her eyes. "I have been sketching some ideas. Nothing like my old collections. Simpler, more timeless. Clothes for real women living real lives." She glanced at me. "Women like you, actually." The next day, she created a new email address and began reaching out to small fabric suppliers and pattern makers she had known early in her career before the celebrity and influencer world had consumed her. In late January, 6 months after the wedding disaster, Pamela finally felt ready to break her public silence. Not with a dramatic interview or social media comeback, but with a simple, dignified statement released through her attorney. "I am grateful for the privacy and support I have received during this difficult time," it read. "The events surrounding my wedding were painful and personal. I am now focused on healing and building a more authentic future. I ask for continued privacy as I move forward with my life. No accusations, no dramatic revelations, no attempt to control the narrative or extend her time in the spotlight. Just a quiet acknowledgement and a request to be left alone." The statement generated a brief flurry of renewed interest, but without Pamela feeding the story with new content, the scandal finally began to fade from public consciousness. Gerald's attempts to rehabilitate his image largely failed, and 2 months later, he was photographed proposing to another wealthy socialite in St. Bart's, proving he had learned nothing from the experience. When Pamela saw the photos online, she just shook her head. "Poor woman, I hope she sees him more clearly than I did." As spring approached, we visited Dad's grave together, placing fresh flowers and sitting on the bench nearby. "I wish he could have seen me now," Pamela said, watching a cardinal land on a nearby tree. "Not the disaster part, but the rebuilding." I think he would be proud that I finally figured out what matters. He was always proud of you, I reminded her. Designer or not, famous or not, just like he was proud of me. She nodded, blinking back tears. Different paths, same routes. That is what he always said, right? On the drive home, Pamela broached a subject she had been avoiding. I am thinking about finding my own place soon. Nothing fancy, just a small apartment to restart my life. She glanced at me nervously. Not because I want to leave you, but because I need to stand on my own again. I understand, I said, and I did. The past 6 months had been about healing, but healing wasn't the end goal. Living was. But promise me something, anything. No more gold-plated camels. They are hell to walk on my carpets. She laughed, the sound free and genuine, like the sister I remembered from childhood's stargazing sessions. Deal? 6 months after the Dubai wedding disaster, Pamela and I sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset. Spring was in full bloom, the maple tree in my backyard now covered in fresh green leaves. She looked different than she had that rainy night when she first appeared on my doorstep, not just in appearance, but in essence. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. Her hair was back to its natural colour, the extension-free waves framing a face that had regained its colour and vitality. But the most significant change was in her eyes. The anxious image-conscious sheen had been replaced by something more grounded and genuine. My sister had found her way back to herself. I signed the lease today, she said, sipping her tea. The apartment above that little bookstore I showed you. It is small, but has great natural light for a design studio. That is wonderful, Pam, I said, genuinely happy for her. When do you move in? Next week. Though I want you to know I am not running away this time. I will be 15 minutes across town, not a world away. I squeezed her hand. I know. She had launched her new design business the month before, a small collection of ethically produced basics that prioritized comfort and functionality without sacrificing style. No runway shows, no celebrity endorsements, just quality pieces marketed through a simple website to women who wanted clothes that worked for their real lives. I got my first 5 orders yesterday, she said, unable to hide her excitement. Real customers buying because they like the designs, not because they want to copy a celebrity look. That is more meaningful than 3 million followers, I observed. Infinitely more. She set down her mug and looked at me intently. I have been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately, not just forgiving Gerald or Beverly or the people who mocked me online, but also asking for forgiveness. You don't need to ask me for anything, Pam. I do, though. She took a deep breath. I abandoned our relationship for years. I chased validation from strangers while pushing away the person who knew and loved the real me. I excluded you from the most important day of my life because I was ashamed of who I had become. And when everything fell apart, I came running back expecting you to pick up the pieces. That is what sisters do, I said simply. Not all sisters. Not the kind of sister I was. She reached for my hand. You never once said I told you so. Never made me feel worse when I was at my lowest. You just opened your door and your heart, no questions asked. I always knew you would find your way back eventually, I told her. The real Pamela was in there somewhere beneath all the filters and followers. She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I am not going back to social media, at least not the way I was before. I might use it for the business, but no more performing my life for strangers. No more curating every moment for likes and comments. Sounds healthy, I agreed. I want to build something real this time, a business that reflects my values, not just what is trending, relationships based on genuine connection, not mutual benefit, a life measured by meaning, not metrics. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to purple. Mum suggested we take that trip to scatter Dad's ashes in Maine, Pamela said eventually. The one we talked about after the funeral but never planned. His birthday is next month. It seems like the right time. I would like that, I said. The three of us together. The way it should be. She looked out at the deepening twilight, her expression thoughtful. You know, when I was planning that ridiculous wedding, I was convinced it was going to be the most important day of my life, the pinnacle of everything I had worked for. And in a way, it was just not how I imagined. How so? It was the day I lost everything I thought I wanted, which allowed me to find what I actually needed. She smiled at me. Perspective, authenticity, my sister. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. And what about love? Do you think you will try again someday? Not any time soon, she laughed. But eventually maybe. Real love next time, though. The kind that doesn't need a hashtag or a 7-tier cake to be meaningful. As darkness fell, we remained on the balcony, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for family dinners and weekend outings, rebuilding the connection that had been strained but never truly broken. The social media world that had once consumed Pamela's life continued without her. New influencers rose and fell, new scandals erupted and were forgotten. The Dubai wedding disaster gradually faded from public memory, replaced by fresher content for the endless appetite of online audiences. But in my small condo, on an ordinary spring evening, something extraordinary had happened. Two sisters who had drifted to opposite ends of the modern experience had found their way back to each other stronger for having weathered the storm apart and together. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted helps you find what you truly need. And sometimes the most profound growth happens not in the spotlight of public attention, but in the quiet moments of genuine connection. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a public or private disaster, or supported someone you love through their lowest moment? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family forgiveness and finding your authentic self. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true worth isn't measured in followers or fame, but in the authenticity of our connections. Be kind to yourself and others, because you never know who might be fighting a battle beneath their seemingly perfect surface.